Hello. I think we're live.
Okay.
The red dot says so.
Okay.
Welcome back to Book Chats with Mostly Books. I'm Jody.
I'm Natasha.
Tonight we are doing something totally weird and bizarre, and hopefully it'll be fun.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed. It's a Friday night mix-up, so we're going to talk about the reading slump. We've all been here.
Yes.
We've all dealt with it. It's terrible.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about books that we have found to get us out of our reading slump, get us back into what we want to be doing, and just like techniques along that line.
Mm-hmm.
But first, I think we should talk about what the reading slump is.
Yeah.
And there is a great definition in the Urban Dictionary on the actual reading slump. It exists in no other dictionary. Oh, you're going to make me read it?
Yeah. You can read it.
But it does exist in the Urban Dictionary. And that is defined as the reader's worst nightmare. During times of uncertainty, it can also be tough to focus and concentrate on your reading. Oh, that's a whole different tangent. But it's your worst nightmare. You just can't read. You just can't read. I feel like, yeah, that's pretty much the reading slump.
Yeah, for sure.
Although I feel like we also need to maybe caveat that with the, this is with the assumption that it's not like you just picked up a book and suddenly, not that you suddenly, but you didn't just pick up a book, couldn't read that book. Like this
Picked up another and could read it just fine. No,
like this is something that's kind of
to.
extended.
Uh-huh,
yeah. And it's not something like, oh, it's just really annoyingly loud in this room right now.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's like an extended period of, you just can't seem to focus on a book.
Yeah. When have you found yourself in a reading slump? Anything trigger it for you?
Oh, I was going to ask you that question too. I think my reading slumps come and go.
Mm-hmm.
I think in the summer I tend to have reading slumps the most, which is interesting. Because that's when I would be inside with the nice air, with a book. But no, for some reason I cannot focus on a book in the summer.
I wonder if it's like it's like seasonal for you in the sense that, you have more family home during the summer because your kids are there.
Yeah.
So it's probably more distracting.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you sit down and then you maybe get
up and down constantly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
not to say that you still find yourself in a reading slump and you just can't get reading.
Right.
So there's definitely still that too.
Yes,
I'm sure.
There's still that. I just can't get reading even when I have the time in the summer. I just seem to not.
How interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I have a seasonal slump.
Yeah.
I will say, wait, do you have any other triggers that cause your reading slump?
No, maybe reading the same kind of genre for a long time, which I do often. I like the same kind. But yeah, I'll get into a huge slump then.
I find I do that too, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is no longer working.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think my other triggers would be if it's like for a book club and I'm feeling obligated to keep reading, but I don't like the book necessarily, then I'm like slugging my way through this book and suddenly I'm like, I just don't want to read anything.
Oh, that's so funny. I'm the complete opposite.
Oh, really?
Yes, if I read a book because of a book club that I really don't like, I can't wait to finish it so I can read one I do like. So then I'm like, yes, now I'm done. I'm going to pick up this one.
That's such a better attitude than mine. Which is like...
That sort of helps me get out of slumps.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. I will say, like, I'll keep reading it. I'm feeling obligated to finish this for these people. Yes. So I'm going to keep trying unless it's just too much. Like, the pacing is terrible and I just can't keep going kind of situation.
Right. I try to do that too. And then I've read this page 3 times.
Yeah.
How many more am I going to read it before I just close the book?
Yeah. I definitely have done a couple of those where I've like read 3 pages and was like, I read that, but I didn't.
Me too.
Not at all.
Me too. I'm like all of a sudden paying attention. I'm like, what? Yeah. I need to go back. How was I not paying attention to what I was reading?
Yep. And then the other, I think, big trigger for me is the book hangover. So like if I've read a book, loved it,
Me too.
Wanted it to keep going. I'm really upset it didn't keep going.
Me too. Especially after like a series ends. So you have nothing to even like look forward to anymore.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. And so sometimes I really get stuck in that place.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, no, nothing was as good as this other book.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been there too. These characters can't stand up to them.
Right?
They're not good enough. I do that.
And truly, it's no fault of the book I've picked up. It's
No.
just that that's not what I want.
Yes, because there are times when I will go back and be like, why did I not read this? It's so good.
Mhm.
Later.
Yep. And you're like, oh, that's right.
Yeah.
I will say I kind of had that whole problem after I finished Malibu Rising.
Oh, really?
It was really good. And I finished it and I was like, well, now what? And I did one of those, like, wander the house looking and, like, picking up a book and being like, I guess I could read that. In hindsight with that one, I should have picked up one of her other ones. I have the Evelyn Hugo. That's not the whole title. I can't remember the whole title. But I should have picked that one up because at least it would have been her style.
Yeah.
And I've heard that some characters in her books appear in others of her books.
Oh, that's nice.
Like briefly at one of the parties. So at least it would have been a little bit similar.
And I do that. If I have a book that I've loved, I will continue to just read that author. Like one of my books to get me out of my slumps. It's an author that I just love and will go to now.
Yeah. And I feel like that's a really great segue into what else we're going to talk about tonight. Oh. So we've chosen a few books where we were in terrible slumps. We've picked them up and it got us out of our slumps. So maybe it would work for you as well. So what do you have as your first out of the slump?
My first out of the slump is an old one. And I read it a long time ago, but it's one I always go back to because I love it. It's Stephen King's The Dark Half. It's dark and gory, which is my favorite and always can get me out of a slump. It's about an author who writes like mysteries, murder mystery ones, and starts getting like threats and obscene phone calls, and it all sounds like the villain that's ending in his series is ending. It all sounds like the villain, and then people start dying the same way, and he's looking like it's him. All the evidence is pointing to him, but it's not. So you're kind of like, how did this character come out to life? It's got lots of
interesting.
Out of the book. It's got lots of interesting, really gross, weird things. Like, he absorbed a twin that gets removed from his brain when he's a kid. It's really good. That was in, like, the first chapter that really sucked me, and I was like, oh my gosh, I love this book.
I really appreciate that the selling point for you is that it's really gross.
Yeah. Stephen King is so good at that, like, when they're gross, and he describes the villain so great of smelling disgusting because he's all pussy and disgusting, and you can like smell it and like see this figure, and you're just like, oh, you're so good at this.
I do really like it when an author is able to not only capture like a visual description but other senses.
Yes,
like that's impressive.
Me too.
To be able to do that.
Yeah.
I will confess I've only read one Stephen King. I've only read The Shining.
Oh, that's not one of my favorites.
Which is good to know because I was okay.
Yeah.
But it wasn't my favorite.
I thought it was okay. I thought that one was pretty slow, actually.
It was a little slow. I wondered if his others were like that.
This one is not.
Okay.
I didn't find the others to be as slow as The Shining. The other ones I've read. I haven't read all of his. But
it's hard to keep up.
yeah, so many. But I haven't found not all of them to be that slow.
Okay, so
at all.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
I should try another one then.
Yeah. And this one picks up right away.
Okay.
So, and I love a book that can hook you right away.
I also like the fact that it's a book about a character that's coming to life.
Yes.
I really like that. I'm one of those people.
Yeah. I like that too. He does lots with this one.
Excellent. Any other thoughts on that before I move on to mine?
No, I want to know what yours is.
Okay. So one of my very quick favorite things to do if I'm in a big reading slump is to read a rom-com. They're quick, they're fast, you know you're going to laugh, you know it's going to end really well. So it's just really easy to get sucked into the story quickly, and it's going to be delightful. So one of my favorites is Ive Got Your Number by Sophie Kinsella. This is actually an older one of hers. Like, I don't know, maybe like 2007-ish era, maybe. Don't quote me on the date. Anyway, it's a little bit older, but it's about this gal who accidentally picks up somebody else's phone, and then he picks up her phone, and then they realize they've done this, but then they keep like texting, and they've met each other, and of course it's one of those wonderful, like, oh, they really didn't like each other when they met, and it was like all these awkward scenes
like
of
the meet cute.
Yeah, you know, and everything awkward that could possibly happens. But it's just absolutely delightful. I laughed out loud. It has one of my favorite features with mixed media. I am such a sucker, and I know they're doing it way more now than they were then, but this is one of the early ones where they were like putting in texting into the book, and their texts and emails are just delightful. Like, oh my goodness, there's this whole thing about going to the dentist that will make sense when you read it, but I was seriously like, laughing so hard on the floor kind of thing.
I love when a book can make me laugh out loud.
Yeah, I love Kinsella's characters because, again, they're just all so awkward that I can relate to that. Like,
yeah,
it's hard to look amazing and be so on point all the time, when in reality I think sometimes we're just not that way.
No, that's not reality at all.
And so I always appreciate that her characters are incredibly quirky and not flaky so much, they're just maybe scattered.
Yeah, a little more real.
Yeah. So it's a delightful read, and a quick way to get me going again. Just pick up something that's light.
Yeah, that's nice. Is there, do you have a different kind of rom-com you pick when you're in a slump versus when you're not in a slump?
I will pick a Kinsella.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like I just always
like that's your go-to. Yep. Okay.
Hers are going to be really good. It's not like I am taking a risk in any way. Yeah. And I find if I'm in a slump, I don't want to risk.
Me either.
I need something that's just going to get me going again.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Me too.
So she would be my pick for that. Otherwise, I don't know. Like, I don't know which other rom-coms I would pick.
Right? Okay. Because I feel like sometimes those can be hit and miss, but I guess so is horror. It's all hit and miss. But everything is.
I think the key that we're going to end up telling over and over tonight is it's about picking up the authors you already know you love.
Yeah.
Because you know they're going to deliver on what you need in that moment.
Yes. Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
Yeah. All right. Well, what else did you bring?
I also brought, let's do sharp objects next. Sharp objects, like I said, I tend to stick with the same genre, so I've got quite a few of the same. And then, so this is Sharp Objects. It was also a miniseries on HBO, but I did read it first, and I will say the show was great, but the book was always a little better. Always. Gillian Flynn is also super good at twists and mixing in the darkness, and I think bringing her characters to life as well. They seem real.
Yeah, they're incredibly flawed in a way that's incredibly realistic.
Yeah, I think so too. So this one's about a journalist who has a troubling past in her childhood with her family. Grows up, moves away. She actually gets an assignment right after getting out of like a mental hospital to go home and investigate a murder of a little girl and then another missing one. And so she has to move back into her childhood home with her crazy mom and sisters. So we quickly learn why she's so messed up. And then the whole mystery of what happened to these girls starts to unfold. And it's real dark. It's really good.
I will say hers are dark and surprising.
Yes, I think so too. She's got great endings.
Yeah, they're twists that, yes, they maybe kind of come out of left field, but they don't at the same time feel out of left field.
Yep. She knows how to twist it in right.
Yeah. So I like
it all
that.
The way through. Yeah.
I do like your theme so far.
Yeah, those will always get me out of a slump. Just something so dark and that you can't really see on TV or anything. It's just there,
right,
in your hands.
Well, and I'm sure the pacing on, at least on this one, I'm not sure about your Stephen King, but I'm sure the pacing is also pretty quick.
Yeah, when I'm in a slump, I like it gets right to the point. That's what I like. The Stephen King, right away it hooks you with the gross story of the twin. And then, like, so this one right away pretty much hooks you, too.
All right. I like being hooked, so that's a good thing. Anything else? Otherwise?
No, go for it.
I'm going to go on, too. So my other, I guess it's kind of on par with a dark theme.
Yeah.
Kind of, is Kim Harrison. This is not the first one in the series. I would definitely start with Dead Witch Walking. And this is her Hollow series, which I'm so delighted that she's returned to because I was so sad when we were done. but we're not, so it's fine. This is funny because it gets me out of my reading slump, but it's also one of my seasonal reads. And I don't know if you read seasonally, but this is probably the only thing I read seasonally. Oh. Weirdly, and it's weird because I read a lot of sci-fi fantasy, and this is an urban fantasy about a witch who's a bounty hunter, who also may have gotten into a little bit of a mix-up with a demon, and there's a lot of issue there that runs through the entire series. So yeah, it's vampires, pixies, witches, like all that stuff. Demons. And I do find I read it in October.
Oh, that is so funny.
It's weird
totally because you in the mindset
for good. Halloween. Yeah, but I read those genres otherwise year round. But for some reason, hers, I always like to read in October, and she does it so well because the main character Rachel lives with a vampire, and this is the best thing I've ever seen with like a vampire relationship with a non-vampire, and like actually like, oh, it's really hard to not want to drink your blood. And Rachel has to go through all sorts of things to like make sure her pheromones aren't giving off too much, you know.
Oh, that is interesting. It goes through all that.
Sneak up on the vampire. Yeah, there's all these like rules on how to live with a vampire.
Oh, that's fun.
And then her partner at work is a pixie who is just crazy. He's very funny, and he has a huge family of other pixies that live in the graveyard garden. So this is a book that I go back to again and again, especially if I'm in a like, I just need something maybe like family, like a found family feeling, because her relationships between all the characters are just amazing, and it's warm and fuzzy, even though it's incredibly also dark.
I was about to say, I love how you're like, it's dark, but it's such a family feeling.
Yeah, a little mixed signals there, right? But it's
dark but happy. That's good. I like those.
Yeah, it's dark but happy. I mean, you know, it's the type of book where you know who's gonna ride or die with you.
Yeah. That's always good to know.
Yeah. It really is, especially when you're dealing with a demon.
Yeah. Yeah. Demons, or vampires.
Multiple demons. Yeah. Yeah. So I super love this book series, and we'll go to it again, like I said, if I'm like, I just need something with a great found family.
Yeah.
That you know is going to continue to develop and get better as the series progresses as well. So, yeah, it's delightful in a totally different way than a rom-com.
Yeah.
All right, what's up next on yours?
I'll change up my genre.
Ooh.
So I'll go to a YA. This is Just One Day by Gail Foreman. I don't do a lot of YAs, and when I do, I don't do YA mysteries or fantasies, really. I go right into, like, the fictions, which is so weird because I don't do that with the adult books.
That's really funny.
But for some reason with the YAs, that's what I pick. Just One Day is one of my favorite ones to go to get out of a slump. It's a feel-good kind of one, I think. So the main girl, she goes to Europe on like a graduation from high school trip with a group for 3 weeks, and on her last day meets a guy named Willem and decides to get out of her comfort zone and go off with him. And then she pretty much has like the day of her life, 24 hours with him, the best day ever, wakes up alone, doesn't know what happened to him, doesn't know anything, has to go home, start college, and has a horrible year trying to figure out what happened. It messes with her so much, decides to go find him at the end of her freshman year. So it's a good one. And this one actually has, I wouldn't say it's a sequel, but Just 1 year. Yeah, companion book, that's the word. But that's his story. And that one I actually did read right after, because I was like, what? When this one ended, I have to keep going. So it totally got me out of a slump, and I did read the next one, Just 1 year, which was just as good.
Yeah, I agree. I've also read these, and I liked him a lot. It's interesting that you said you go to fiction on the way. I'm just trying to I wonder what it is about it. Maybe
I have no idea. It's so bizarre, and I don't really read a whole lot anyways, but yeah, the ones I've done, like The Fault in Our Stars, loved that one. We Were Liars, loved that one. I don't think I've actually really read any that were dark.
Maybe it's like your palette cleanse.
Yeah,
this
maybe.
This is the one that gets you when you're like, I've had so much dark.
Yeah, probably.
I just can't read that.
I need something light.
Yeah.
So I'm happy.
This is your lighter palette cleansing read.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you read other Gail Forman's?
I haven't, just those two.
I would be curious what you think of her others.
Yeah,
I like her writing.
Yeah, I did too.
It's really well done.
I thought she was real well done.
She captures, like, I don't want to really say young love, but it is.
But
young love, like,
young
really
love.
well.
Really good. I think so too. We're just like, oh.
It's just so sweet.
You're so happy for them.
And yet they're dealing with a lot in their lives as well. So it's not like she's not hitting hard topics.
Right.
So, but she does it really well.
She does. She does it good.
How funny. I like your palette cleanser. I'm gonna go. I think that's what it is for you.
Yeah.
I don't know really. I'm just saying that. Okay. So I also like to have something that I know is going to be a quick read. And I'm like, I think I've already kind of said that too. Like, I like to pick it up. I know I'm going to get engrossed in it in paragraph 1, and I'm not going to want to put this book down because the pace is going to be like that. So one of my other go-to authors is Kimberly McCreight. I don't think I've talked about her on this, but if I have, you get it again. I started with her first book, not her first book, but my first book of hers was Reconstructing Amelia, which was about a mom's whose daughter went missing. And again, it did texting. I really have a weird thing. But keep in mind...
But it's life now.
I say this was back before it was like it is now. Mm-hmm. This is back in like 2009, 2010 era where we are texting. Mm-hmm. But we're not like... That's not our only way of talking on the phones.
Right. We still took phone calls.
Yeah. Right. We left voicemails.
Yeah.
So now I basically read everything she writes. Like, literally, anytime she has a book coming out, I am like, when can I get that advance read? Like, I'm badgering our sales reps as quickly as I can. And she has a new one coming out in, like, September. Mark that down. So this is her most recent one until September, which is called A Good Marriage. And the other thing I love... Well, let me tell you what this is about. So A Good Marriage is about this family that have moved to Brooklyn, which is up and coming, as we all know. And so she moves into a pretty fancy neighborhood, starts to get like chummy with the other neighbors. They all have their kids going to the same like elite kind of school. And so then there's drama going on with when the school's email server gets hacked, and then all of a sudden there's a body, and you know, it all spirals, as this tends to happen in a psychological thriller, right?
You find a body, maybe.
That too.
Yeah.
Can cause some issues, I suppose, especially if it's in your house.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the other thing I love, aside from that she does really great pacing, is that her books are incredibly twisty and circular. And I mean that something very tiny in the beginning of that book is going to be relevant. And you are going to come back to that somehow at the end. And you're not going to know how. And it all makes perfect sense. Like, nothing is, like, out of left field. But at the same time, I'm always like, I just did not see that coming.
I love that. That's like what Gillian Flynn can do.
And all of her psychological thrillers that I have read, which I've done, I think 3 or 4 now, have been like that. And they're all like so twisty and so circular. I'm always just like, I can't believe that this random person was important. But now, yes, of course they were. So yeah, I always recommend her if you need a new thriller read, as well as getting out of a slump read.
Yeah, that sounds really good.
Mm-hmm. Have you read?
I haven't.
Oh, you should.
I should.
I couldn't remember if I'd made you read one yet or not.
No, not yet. I want to read that one though.
I really liked this one and Reconstructing Amelia. Those might be my 2 favorites. And she also has written some young adult books too.
Oh.
Which are still sort of mystery-esque, but I think they were a little bit, at least the couple I've read are also a little bit more paranormal.
Oh, okay.
So they're pretty good reads as well.
Yeah.
If you need something else to get you in the mood to reading. All right, what else you got?
All right, I have a Riley Sager. This is his first one, Final Girls. I love Riley Sager. After reading this one, I always go to him. I think he's so entertaining. He's so fast-paced. He gets right down to it, and it's always something fun. Well, it's dark. Fun for me.
Okay.
So far, I said fun, and then we're like, I should probably fix that.
We have equated fun and dark.
Yeah.
Warm and fuzzy and dark. Maybe you shouldn't ask us for warm and fuzzy books if you don't want it to be dark.
Yeah. Especially because I'm like, this is so fun. It's, she survived a massacre. So the main girl goes off on a trip with her friends and is the only one to come back because they're all killed. So she's called a final girl, and there's a few others in the country. They've never met, but they know of each other and their stories. And then one night, one of them gets killed, and the other one shows up at her house. Her name is Quincy, so shows up at Quincy's house. And she has chosen to block everything out, so she loves her Xanax. And just more of a calm life, and tries to say she doesn't remember anything that happened. So she gets it out of her so she could sort of start coping and dealing, and then, figuring out what really happened is the mystery, and it's actually really great.
Yeah.
Yes, he mixes his characters in.
I have only read that one, but I really liked it too. And I read it because you loved it.
Yes.
And it was a really good
He always
choice.
writes such a great heroine. Like, his female leads are so great, and he always has a female lead. And he's so good with them. They're smart. That's why I like them. They don't make... They sometimes will make a stupid human mistake, but most of the time they have common sense. Like, when you're reading something or you're watching something and you're like, why are you going there? His characters don't do that. You're never thinking, why are you doing this, stupid?
Yeah, because you can relate when they make those poor decisions on why they made that poor decision.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, I might have done that too.
Yes.
And I also like that they're not an unreliable narrator. At least I don't remember her being unreliable in any way.
She just doesn't really remember what happened, but it doesn't ever seem unreliable. Like, as she's remembering, it's not true. That never happens.
Yeah.
As she remembers, it all comes back to the truth.
Yeah.
For what she knows, I guess.
Right. What her truth is.
Yes. For what her truth is.
And you've read then others of his.
I read almost all of them. And then I haven't read this one. It's his newest, Survive the Night, because he always gets me out of a slump. So any time I'm in one, I just pick up the next one I haven't read.
So do you kind of set it aside for that moment
yes.
when you're like,
That's why I haven't done this one yet. But it sounds so good, and it's set in 1991. And I've realized now I'm really digging the book set in the 90s. It's so nostalgic because I can be like, I remember this. It's so good. But it's going to be creepy too.
I'm laughing because that does not surprise me at all with you. You are a 90s girl through and through.
I know. It's so horrible.
But I do like that you save some books for getting out of the slump. That's really smart. I've never actually thought to do that.
Yes, that's why I haven't done this one. I'm waiting. And even when I saw it, I was like, oh, no.
I guess that's not true because I do save her. Or, nope, those I read instantly. But
I was going to say you're already waiting for the advance.
But I will save Kinsella's.
And
that I have to read instantly. But I will save the Sophie Kinsella's for that day where I'm like, I just need something breezy and quick. Yeah. So interesting. I guess I guess I do that too. Yeah. I just hadn't really thought about it out loud.
I know.
Okay, I have a couple more.
Okay,
good. So every now and then I also really need to do a palate cleanse because sometimes I get stuck doing I do a lot of fantasy, as everybody on this knows. I do. I try to do thrillers, but with the psychological thrillers, which are my preference as far as a mystery thriller goes.
Me too.
I find that you can't do too many of them back to back because eventually they sort of all blend together, which is not great. And I don't want to say that that's a fault of an author. It's not. They often all have a unique perspective and a twist that are different, but at the same time they all start.
It's still a psychological thriller
merged together.
Yeah, that's usually how I get in my slumps.
Yep. So
you
sometimes
can tell by my picks.
I just need to get out.
I start another one.
So I every now and then we'll go to a cozy mystery, but I'm very picky on my cozy mysteries. I personally have loved Bailey Cates's Magical Bakery, I think is the series title. Broomsticks and Brownies is the first one. And that is about a gal who is up north, and she's broke up with her fiance. Life is kind of falling apart, and she's like, what do I do? So she decides to go to Savannah, where her aunt and uncle are, and open up a bakery, because she was already trained in the culinary arts, so this is perfect. So she opens up a bakery with her aunt and uncle, and then also discovers, by the way, you're a witch. That's hereditary. Yeah, we all knew that was coming. So now she's running a bakery, trying to figure out her like identity as a witch, which is she's pretty good at that. That wasn't too much of a hang up, but she still has to kind of deal with a lot of that, and her new location, and just getting life back on track. And then, of course, there's a dead body, because it's a cozy mystery, but you don't see the dead body. It's totally fine. It's just off in a corner, and you hear about it. But, of course, she ends up having to become an amateur sleuth and figure out who the killer is. Because, of course, you know, in the first book, her uncle is accused of being the killer, so she has to save him. And somehow, every case, she gets, like, roped into it, even though she's like, no, I'm out. I'm not going to do anymore. And then somehow, you know how this goes.
Yeah.
If you're reading any of these kind of books.
Yeah.
But again, super, like, cute with the found. Well, it's not even a found family. It is her family, but she does have a found family when she joins a coven. And they're all delightful. And these are great because if you're looking for a book that's not, like, gory and gross. So don't read these, Tasha. Yeah. Although I think you maybe have read that one.
Yes. I liked it.
So if you're looking for something that's just light with a cute mystery, not a cute mystery, I'm not sure how you get that. So light with a mystery, this is really great. As long as you also don't mind a little bit of the supernatural elements. Cookies and Clairvoyancy is her most recent one, and that came out last summer. I think her next one comes out this fall as well in the series. And they're all great. You know, the characters continue to develop as you read the series. And you meet new people and new life things happen. And there's always an interesting case that comes along that sometimes is magically involved. Actually, they're pretty much always magically involved because it involves her. And then she has great recipes, which I really should try the recipes in the book as well.
I want to try the recipes.
Because I do love the baking parts in the book as well. And she infuses her magic into the baked goods. Why don't we have a bakery like that?
I know. Wouldn't that be awesome?
Yes. Yeah, and my last one, because every now and then you just need to do something totally different, as we've said.
Yeah.
So every now and then I pull up a historical fiction, like if nothing else is working. Now, I will say, this might be my last go-to to get out of a slump, because I also realize with a historical fiction, it's going to be slower paced. It's going to be more descriptive. But sometimes what you need is a really lush world.
Yeah, I agree.
Sometimes that's why I find you can go to a historical fiction if it's a well-done one. Some of the other ones,
I agree.
And I have liked Philippa Gregory for a long time. The Other Boleyn Girl, probably one of my earliest historical fiction reads, and yes, I did get into the Tudor craze, as many others did back in the day. But I like her characters are always incredibly rich and vibrant. You can, like, especially at least with this one, like, you can really see the palaces and all these historical figures walking around, and you can feel the fabrics of their clothing. So, like, when I just need something that I can just really, like, just dive into and, like, just live in for a while, the historical fiction is where I would go. I do tend to stay more with courts and palaces and intrigue, as everyone should already know, because we talk about that a lot. Because even my fantasies, I'm like, ooh, political intrigue, I'm up for that. What's happening? Oh, courts, yeah, let's go. What palace is it? But it's not fantasy, because sometimes you need to get out of that too.
Yeah. And I will say, I've read that because you loved it so much, and it was really, really good. It did suck me in, and I did love living in that world. And it wasn't long. It was a pretty quick read, because you would think it looks really long. You think it looks like it's a pretty long book, but it didn't feel long.
Yeah,
and I thought that was nice with historical fiction. I think they can feel long, and like you're forced to read something and learn something while you're reading. But hers, I feel like I learned stuff I didn't know, but it was nice. in like a relaxed way.
I also find Gregory does a really great dialogue. Like you can, it feels older timed. I'm going to say it like that. And yet it's contemporary language.
Yeah.
And I feel like because sometimes if it's not done well, it feels very contrived. And I don't feel like hers is contrived. But it also keeps the storyline going. And I like that because sometimes historical fictions can get descriptive.
Yeah.
But I think that helps with her pace.
I do too.
Hers are not as slow paced as some. Can
I agree.
be.
I agree.
I don't recommend the movie at all. Just don't watch it.
I have to agree with that too. I had seen the movie a long time ago, I think when it first came out, so before I even read that.
Oh.
And when I read the book, it was completely different. So you really have to go, if you're gonna read it and then watch it, really go into it knowing you're reading something completely different than you're gonna watch.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm really glad you actually read it after watching it because it was not a good movie.
Yeah.
You might have been totally like, I'm done.
No, you loved it so much. I wanted to read it to see.
This is my all-time favorite of hers. I mean, and I've read almost all of hers. I haven't read her most recent one. But this is probably her best one. At least as far as like characters go and all of that. But they're also good. So, yeah. Anyway. I think that's all I have on that tangent. I wanted to also add that I did have a customer, because I've been talking about how people get out of the reading slumps in preparation of tonight. And one customer said that, 2020 sucked. We all know that. So she spent the year reading children's books. And she loved them. And that was pretty much all she read. And I think that was an interesting point because, it's short. It's going to be quick reading. But their stories are really good. Like, you're going to get really sucked in because they are trying to draw in readers that have a shorter...
It might even be reluctant readers. They're trying to draw them in.
Yeah, well, and like you don't necessarily
because
have
it's a
long...
kid that's being told, you have to read. Yeah.
And you might not have as long of attention span at that age. So the stories are going to be good and fast.
Yeah, and fast. They have to be. Yeah, actually, saying that, I never thought of it, but when I do, read the books out loud to my kids, like a chapter book that I'm enjoying too, it does then make me go and pick up one of my books that I can get into.
Oh, interesting. I do like that when you've read
But I never thought of that until you said it.
Oh.
Yeah.
I like when you read to your kids' books that sometimes you're upset when you're liking the book and they're like, no, Mom, I don't want to do that right now.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm like, come on, let's just do the next chapter. They're like, no, we're done. Like, it ended on a cliffhanger.
You're like, fine, but I'm reading ahead.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know if I have any other parting thoughts on reading slumps other than they're terrible.
Yep.
I'm not a fan. I think my biggest thing is just go. If a book isn't working for you, don't feel like you need to keep reading it.
Right, put it down and try something else.
And maybe you're just not.
Even try a different genre. Like that's what I do sometimes. That's why I found YAs. I had to just leave that genre completely to get out of my slump.
And it's not to say that that book that you are struggling with isn't good. It's just not hitting you right then.
Right.
So just realize you can come back to it later.
Yep.
And it's okay to pick up something else. Unless it's for book club, and then you best be reading it, I guess.
Yeah. Get it finished.
Right.
Yeah.
Shoot, I feel like I had one other thought on that. Oh, and the other thing was, too, sometimes you just need a little break, too, I think.
Yeah.
So it's okay if you find yourself still in a reading slump in a couple days and you have tried picking up multiple books and it's still not working.
Yeah.
It's okay, I think, to say, I just need a little bit of time off. I will come back.
Yeah.
And then to do it in a couple of days. Try again and see if that works. Because eventually you will get out of it.
Eventually. Yeah, you will. Just take some time.
Right?
Yeah.
All right. I feel like that's everything we want to say on reading slumps.
I think so. I hope it helps you get out of one.
Yeah, and if you have thoughts or techniques that we did not address, you should definitely comment on that as well, because we'd be curious on what
works for other people.
Yeah, and what other techniques we should be trying if we're like, oh, this is just not working this round.
Oh, yeah.
I'd be very interested to hear what others are doing. And then next week, I'm joined with Jen, and we are reading Blackwater Sister. And I apologize, I forgot to pull it, and I'm not sure. Oh, nope.
Is it near me?
Yes. It's right there. By Zen Cho.
I feel like I should.
Yep, right where your hand is. Just over to the right. I'm so sorry that I was ill prepared for this. Anyway, next week we are reading Blackwater Sister by Zen Shu. I'm not sure if I pronounced that name right. I will try to do better next week. We are going kind of to a more urban, I'm going to call it urban fantasy. We'll see what Jen says next week, but I'm going to say it's an urban fantasy about a girl who goes back to Malaysia and is suddenly being haunted by her deceased grandmother and realizing she needs to finish some unfinished business her grandmother needs her to do. That may involve a few gods as well. So tune back in next week. I'm sure we'll have lots to say on all of that. All right. Bye.
Bye.